In the church loft, a woman in a gray wig watched Margaret Holloway's funeral. Only her trembling hand gave her away. She was Margaret. She wrote, Andrew, 90 seconds. Laughed, too. Called me complicated.
My mother was complicated. She clung to things she didn't need.
In the fifth row, two family friends smirked and stifled a laugh.
Margaret's pen dug into the page. They laughed. She underlined it until the paper split.
Patricia Holloway rose from the front pew, her face white, and walked out without a word. Margaret watched her daughter leave, her own heart pounding, but she stayed hidden. Andrew returned to his seat and checked his watch. The service was an inconvenience to him. She shut the notebook. One tear smeared the ink, but her expression was no longer grief. It was judgment. But to understand this, you must go back 3 weeks, to the night Margaret heard her son's true voice. 3 weeks earlier, Margaret Holloway sat in her living room at midnight. Staring at the door, she'd heard Andrew's car pull in.
Andrew's voice sliced through the wall. She's 71. The house is too big for her. We need to discuss the estate.
Margaret pressed her hand against the doorframe. He spoke as if she were already in the ground.
He laughed, low and dismissive. You know how she is, sentimental. Holds on to things she doesn't need.
In the next room, her son was bartering her memory for square footage, and his sisters didn't object. The next morning, a specialist showed her a thyroid scan. A small nodule. It looked dire. It was treatable. She would be fine.
Margaret stared at the film. A death sentence commuted. And for the first time in months, she knew precisely what to do.
That evening, she sat in the dark, her tea cold, and the idea hardened into a plan. She would let her family believe she was gone.
She whispered, Frank will help. He has to.
And then she picked up the phone and dialed. The following afternoon, Margaret stood in the back office of Chatham Funeral Home, facing her cousin Frank and his wife Irene.
She laid it out plainly. I need you to help me fake my death.
Frank's coffee cup stopped midair. Margaret, that's insane.
She didn't blink. Insane is what my son said about me last week. This is a diagnosis.
Irene, measuring her words, said, To do this, I'd need to certify a death. There are legal risks.
Margaret leaned forward. I know, but I have a treatable condition. No one knows, and I have only one chance to see who my children really are.
Silence held the room. Then Irene, a woman who had buried thousands, made a decision. We'll need a wig, an obituary, and a day. They set the date, Saturday. Irene would issue the paperwork. Frank would handle the church. Margaret would die in her sleep. That night, Margaret placed her thyroid pills in a lockbox next to her will. She wouldn't need them where she was going.
She looked at her reflection and thought, by Sunday morning, I'll be dead to them, and then I'll see the truth.
Saturday morning, Margaret's bed was perfectly made. An envelope labeled, To my family, rested on the pillow. She had already slipped away to Frank's.
Irene's voice was steady on the phone. Andrew, I am sorry. Your mother passed away in her sleep.
Andrew's reply came without a pause. How soon can we get into the house? I need to secure the estate papers.
There was no crack in his voice, only the swift arithmetic of someone settling accounts. A mile away, Patricia heard the same words. She dropped the phone onto her kitchen floor and collapsed onto the sofa.
Her mind repeated a single word, like a door she couldn't open. Mama, Mama.
At Frank's house, Margaret sat in the spare room, the phone silent in her hand. The death was official.
She heard Andrew's cold calculation without needing to pick up the line. And already, he's counting the rooms.
That evening, Patricia stared at her phone. The obituary had already appeared. Margaret Holloway, 71, passed away at her home. a photo of her mother's silver hair, and in the guest room, Margaret pulled the gray wig from the box Irene had left. Tomorrow she would attend her own funeral. Sunday morning, in the funeral home prep room, Irene stood behind Margaret, working the gray wig over her silver hair.
No one will recognize you. The glasses and the overcoat will do the rest.
Margaret stared at the stranger in the mirror. That's the point. I am already a ghost.
On the counter, the newspaper lay open. She lifted it, her own obituary, black-bordered, final.
Margaret Holloway, survived by her son Andrew and daughter Patricia. Devoted homemaker. It sounded like a receipt.
Her thumb covered the word devoted. No mention of the 23 years she'd run the household alone.
Irene touched her shoulder. Are you sure you want to go through with this?
Margaret folded the newspaper precisely. I've been their mother for 48 years. Today I find out if they were ever my children.
She slipped the black overcoat over her silk blouse. The pearls stayed, the one piece of herself she refused to hide. Then she opened the door and walked toward the church, a mourner at her own grave. She slipped through the side door of St. Anne's before the first guest arrived. Irene guided her up to the choir loft.
The loft was cold and dark. From here, she could see the casket, polished wood, heaped with white lilies, her own.
Irene pressed a pen into her hand. Just write what you need to remember. Below, the doors opened. Patricia entered first, her arm around Lucas. Her daughter's face was already bleached with tears.
Margaret's hand trembled. Lucas, her grandson, looked hollow. A boy wearing a man's suit, his eyes already red.
Andrew came last. He slid into the pew without greeting anyone, his suit pressed, his face a clean slate.
He didn't put a hand on his sister's shoulder. He didn't look toward the casket. He checked his phone. For a moment, a needle of doubt pierced her. What am I doing to Lucas? She almost stood up.
Irene whispered, "You came for the truth. Don't leave without it."
The organ sounded. Margaret pressed the notebook flat. She would not look away now. The priest's words rolled over the congregation. Mercy, resurrection, God's timing. Margaret barely heard a syllable.
Patricia's voice cracked through the first sentence. My mother used to stay up until I got home, every night, even when I was 30.
Margaret wrote one word, Patricia, underlined twice. The ink bled a little from the pressure. Then Lucas stood. The boy's legs were unsteady. He walked to the microphone, opened his mouth, and no sound came.
Patricia half rose. Baby, it's okay. Sit back down, sweetheart. Her arms reached for him.
In the loft, Margaret's pen hovered without moving. He's just a child. I am doing this to a child.
Lucas didn't sit. He stayed at the lectern for 8 long seconds, then turned and walked back to his seat in silence. Andrew hadn't moved. His arms were crossed. He glanced at the ceiling once, as if calculating how long this would take. The silence stretched. The priest inclined his head toward Andrew. It was his turn to speak.
Margaret's hand tightened until the pen shook. She didn't realize she was holding her breath.
Andrew stepped to the lectern, unfolded a note card, and looked at no one. The church held its breath.
My mother was complicated. I am not going to pretend otherwise today.
He smiled, the rehearsed smile of a man about to share a harmless observation.
She had a real love of holding on to things she didn't need.
From the 5th row, 2 old friends of the family let out a stifled chuckle, then covered their mouths.
They laughed. Margaret's pen dug the words into the page. At my own funeral.
Patricia didn't gasp. She just stood, her jaw locked, and walked straight down the aisle without a pause. Lucas turned, shock on his face, but his mother was already gone, the side door swinging shut. In the loft, the pen kept moving. She counted the seconds of Andrew's speech, the syllables of his joke. Andrew cleared his throat. He still had a brief final line, but his eyes followed the door.
She would have liked all this fuss. He folded the note card and stepped back.
The priest muttered a final prayer. Andrew was the first to reach for his coat in the back doorway. Patricia stood motionless, tears dripping onto the stone floor. She hadn't left.
Margaret wrote, Patricia came back. She never really left. Then she underlined Andrew, never looked for her.
Andrew checked his watch again. A quick professional motion, and then his phone lit up with a text.
Margaret shut the notebook. I've seen enough. Patricia gets the house. Lucas gets his future. Andrew, no more.
The congregation thinned. Lucas walked out alone, confused. The priest closed his book.
Margaret leaned to Irene. I am going to the parking lot. Only Patricia needs to know what happened here today.
Irene caught her sleeve. Wait until they've all gone. And if Andrew sees you first.
Margaret stood, smoothing the gray wig. He won't. I am still dead to him.
The church was empty now. Only the casket and the heaped lilies. Margaret closed the notebook, pressed it to her chest, and followed Irene down the narrow stairs. In the stairwell, the gray wig scratched at her neck. She pulled it off. Then the glasses and her own silver hair fell free.
She handed the wig to Irene. Hold my old face. I won't need it again.
At the side door, she peered out. The parking lot was nearly empty. Only one car remained. Patricia sat inside, her forehead against the steering wheel, her shoulders shaking. She hadn't driven away. Margaret felt her heart clench. She crossed the gravel in quick, quiet steps, the pearls still against her throat. She stopped at the driver's window. Through the glass, she saw her daughter's fingers clutching a damp tissue. For a long second, she froze. Then she lifted her hand and knocked, a soft tap, like a question. The sound was small, a pebble on glass, but in the empty lot, it carried. Patricia's head rose slowly, her eyes not yet understanding the shape outside her window. What came out of Patricia was not a word. It was a sound ripped from somewhere deeper than grief.
Mama? Number? No, you are.
Margaret pulled the door handle. Cold air rushed in, along with the impossible.
You were dead. I saw the obituary. I heard Irene.
I am here. I am real. I faked it, Patricia. I had to see the truth.
Patricia pulled back, staring at her mother's face, as if it were a photograph come to life.
Andrew, he laughed at you. He made a joke.
I know. I heard every word. That's why I'm here.
Patricia's sobs turned jagged, half a laugh, half disbelief, and then she was crying again, her face buried against Margaret's shoulder.
Take me home, sweetheart. We have a lot to talk about and a will to rewrite.
At Patricia's small house, Margaret sat on the floral sofa, the notebook open on her lap. She told her daughter everything.
The thyroid nodule is treatable. I am not dying. But when I heard Andrew that night, I had to know who he really was.
Patricia's voice shook. He said those things about you while you were still alive? He's been planning this.
She let the anger in Patricia's voice settle. It matched her own.
Then she told Patricia about the wig, the choir loft, the notebook, about the two people who laughed.
Patricia covered her face. I walked out. I couldn't stay, but I should have stood up and screamed.
You did what was right for you, and you came back. That's what I saw.
Margaret closed the notebook. The decision was no longer a question. She picked up the phone.
Patricia leaned closer. Who are you calling?
Mr. Harrison. It's time to make a new will. And Andrew must not know until it's too late.
Mr. Harrison's office smelled of pipe tobacco and old paper. He didn't blink when Margaret walked in. He'd known her for 40 years.
Margaret, I saw the obituary. I assume there's a story, and not a short one.
It's long, but the end is simple. I need a new will. Patricia gets the house outright. Lucas's college, fully funded.
Patricia's hand found her mother's. She didn't speak, but her grip said everything.
And Andrew, Mr. Harrison's pen paused above the paper.
Margaret set a framed photograph on the desk. Andrew, at 6, beaming, a gap-toothed boy with a new bike.
Andrew gets this. And a short note. The last year I fully recognized him, age 6.
The pen scratched for 20 minutes. Margaret signed without hesitation, Patricia's hand on her shoulder. The codicil note, typed and signed, was slipped under the frame's glass. For Andrew, the last year I fully recognized him. Love, Mother.
Margaret slid the will across the desk. Lock it away. He won't know until I am ready to tell him, and I am not ready yet.
The next morning, Margaret sat at Patricia's kitchen table, the blinds drawn. She didn't look up when Andrew's car rolled past the house. Andrew pulled into his mother's driveway and killed the engine. The house looked smaller without her. He used his old key. The study smelled of dust and leather. He pulled open every drawer.
Where are the savings bonds? The stock certificates? She must have kept something liquid.
He found a folder, property tax bills, a small home equity line, and nothing else. His mother had lived on a fixed income.
That can't be right. Patricia must have cleaned the place out before I got here.
He slammed the drawer. The noise rattled the china in the next room.
He pulled out his phone. Start the probate. I need control of the house immediately.
He walked out without locking up. The house was just a frame now, that evening. Patricia's phone buzzed. Andrew's name on the screen. Margaret watched her daughter ignore it. Andrew's car pulled up hard against the curb. He slammed the door and mounted Patricia's porch, his fist already raised.
Open the door, Patricia. I know you heard me. We need to talk about the estate.
Inside, Patricia braced herself against the doorframe. From the hallway, Margaret retreated silently to the back room.
What do you want, Andrew? You've already taken everything that wasn't nailed down.
What did she leave you? She must have left you something, and I want to see it.
She left us her memory, and you turned it into a joke. Get off my porch.
Andrew's face reddened. He leaned in past the screen. She was a sentimental old woman who couldn't let go. You are just like her.
Patricia's jaw tightened. For a fraction of a second, the words "she's alive" sat on her tongue. She swallowed them.
You'll hear from my lawyer. We're going to court, and I'll force the sale of that house. He turned and stormed off.
In the quiet after, Patricia's trembling hands dialed Mr. Harrison. From the stairs, Margaret watched, and a decision hardened in her chest. At 10 o'clock the next day, Andrew sat in a new lawyer's office, a stack of papers labeled "Petition for Partition" in front of him. The lawyer explained that a petition would force the sale of the property within 60 days. Andrew signed without hesitation. By Thursday, a process server handed a thick envelope to Patricia. Margaret watched her daughter's face drain as she opened it.
He's suing to partition the estate. He's going to take the house.
Margaret read over her daughter's shoulder. The word partition meant her son would sell her home for its market value.
She let out a slow breath. Then I can't stay dead any longer. Call Mr. Harrison. Tell him I am alive. Tell him I want my family in his office on Monday morning. And don't tell Andrew I'll be there.
Patricia's hand trembled as she dialed. Margaret smoothed her silver hair and rehearsed the words she'd been holding for weeks. That night, she stood in Patricia's bathroom mirror. The pearls were back against her throat. The gray wig was gone. She was herself, and she was ready to break her son with a photograph and a single line he would never forget. On Friday morning, Margaret took Patricia's phone to the back steps and dialed Mr. Harrison herself. She spoke in a voice no one else could hear.
It's Margaret Holloway. I am alive, and I need you to call a family meeting. Monday, 10 o'clock.
The old lawyer's silence stretched 5 seconds. Then he said he'd draw up the necessary letters.
Don't tell Andrew I'll be there. Let him think it's a reading of my old will.
Patricia stood in the kitchen doorway, her arms crossed tight. She heard the whole thing. When Margaret hung up, she turned to her daughter. No words, just a look that said the stage was set.
She spent Saturday pacing the kitchen floor, muttering the words she would say. Andrew, you were 6 when I still recognized you.
In the living room, she placed the photograph on her lap and traced the smile of a boy who hadn't yet learned cruelty.
Patricia sat beside her. Are you sure you want to do this in front of Lucas?
Lucas deserves to know that truth has a cost. And Andrew, he'll learn that mothers get the last word.
On Monday at 10, Mr. Harrison's conference room smelled of old paper and impatience. Andrew sat with one leg crossed, checking his phone.
Andrew glanced at Patricia as she took her seat. Glad you could make it. Let's get this over with.
Mr. Harrison removed his glasses. Before we discuss the estate, there is someone you all need to see.
The door opened fully. For a half second, no one breathed. Margaret Holloway crossed the threshold. Silver hair, pearls, a photograph in her hand. Alive. Andrew shot to his feet. His chair scraped the floor. All color drained from his face.
Patricia was already crying. A hand clamped over her mouth, but her eyes were bright.
Lucas stood slowly. Grandma. The word was barely a whisper.
Margaret set the photograph on the table. I'm sorry you grieved, but I'm not sorry I did this. Sit down, Andrew.
The room fell silent. Margaret reached for the will. The reckoning had only begun.
Margaret lifted the final page. To my daughter Patricia, I leave the house outright. To my grandson Lucas, full college funding.
Andrew broke in, his voice cracking. That's not possible. The old will gave me 50%.
The old will no longer exists. And to my son, Andrew. She paused, then touched the frame. I leave one item.
She extended the framed photograph, a 6-year-old boy astride a bicycle, gap-toothed and bright. The room held its breath. Under the glass, the codicil read, "For Andrew, the last year I fully recognized him, age 6. Love, Mother." Andrew's face went white, then red. He crushed the paper in one fist, the glass audibly cracking.
You staged all of this. You are a cruel, selfish old woman.
He threw the frame onto the table, spun on his heel, and wrenched open the door.
I never want to see any of you again. The words were a knife thrown at his mother's back.
The door slammed. A single shard of glass spun on the wood. In the silence, Lucas took Patricia's hand, and Margaret did not look away. As the echo of the door faded, Lucas crossed the room in 3 unsteady strides. His face was raw with everything he'd held inside.
Grandma, I thought you were gone. I stood there and couldn't even say your name.
Margaret pulled him into her arms. I know, sweetheart. I heard every word you tried to say. I heard you.
She held him the way she had when he was a child, her own tears falling soundlessly into his hair.
Patricia stepped forward and wrapped her arms around both of them. No words. Just the 3 of them breathing together.
Mr. Harrison quietly gathered the scattered papers, leaving the shattered photo untouched. The air in the room had shifted.
Let's go home, Margaret said, her voice steadier than it had been. We have a garden to tend and a life to live.
They walked out, Patricia on one side, Lucas on the other, the 3 of them filling the narrow hallway. Later, on Patricia's back porch, they sat in the low September sun, No one spoke of Andrew's name. The will was signed. The betrayal answered. For the first time in weeks, Margaret let the silence feel like peace. 3 days after the meeting, Margaret turned her key in the old lock. The house breathed open, no longer a husk.
Patricia carried a crate of fresh curtains. I'll hang these in the living room. This house needs light.
Margaret touched the hallway wall. It needs to breathe. So do I.
Lucas spent the afternoon painting the spare bedroom. A college fund was already waiting, but today he just wanted his grandmother's house ready.
In the sunroom, Margaret repotted an orchid, her silver hair catching the afternoon light. She whispered, "I missed you."
Patricia cooked dinner in the old kitchen, the same copper pans their mother had used for 40 years. The three of them ate at the small oak table. That evening, Margaret sat on her back porch, the swing creaking its old familiar rhythm. The garden roses were still blooming.
She drew a long breath and let it out. The past is a closed door. I don't need to open it again.
From inside, Patricia and Lucas's laughter came through the screen door, a sound that belonged in this house now. Margaret didn't go inside right away. She let the laughter wash over her, and the old house stood warm behind her, full. 21 years later, Margaret Holloway sat on her porch at 92, the old framed photographs resting in her lap.
She traced the gap-toothed smile with a thumb. I never stopped loving you, Andrew. I just stopped recognizing you.
Miles away, Andrew hunched over a bar, gray-haired and silent. He hadn't spoken at a family event since the day he stormed out. When Margaret finally passed, Patricia and Lucas stood graveside, placing roses on a casket. The obituary listed only them, but the house never emptied. Lucas married, brought children, and the garden rang with small feet chasing butterflies. Margaret had lived 21 more years in that house, loved and unburdened. She died knowing the truth she'd needed.
Her last words about Andrew were simple. He chose his inheritance. I chose my family.
Andrew never read the new obituary. He never called. He sat in the same bar year after year, a ghost of his own making. And every spring, a young boy, named after his grandmother, ran through the same garden, laughing at butterflies. The photograph stayed on her dresser, the codicil note yellowed but intact. The story of a mother's final lesson.